So guys, these days BMW are known for making some of the weirdest looking SUVs on the market. Whether it's the weird rear end of the new X2, the bulky looks of the M-only XM, or the horrifically styled BMW iX. I mean, do you guys remember what I did to that car last time it was on the channel?
Super! Excellent!
But they could also be credited for making the original sporty SUV over 25 years ago, perhaps the most normal looking SUV, or the most handsome one ever since, and that is of course the X5. And BMW never referred to it as an SUV themselves. From day one they called it an SAV, a sports activity vehicle, because this was always meant to be more like a car in terms of its looks and in terms of its handling. Ever since then, the X5 has stood out as the driver's choice out of all of the usual German marques. But now this LCI of our G-Series car comes at a time where every single manufacturer out there looks towards making an SUV when it's time to either diversify their lineup or go towards electric. So it's a much harder fought battle, with high-rise cars being built way more than saloons used to be. The main rival, Mercedes, seems to make a bajillion SUVs already, more than any other type of car. And this X5 has enough internal rivals already, as you've already had a peek at. Now, as bleak as things may seem, let me tell you that this xDrive50e might be the best non-M X5 that I have ever driven. It's got enough technology, luxury, and performance chops to, I think, dismiss the best rival and even most EVs. So I'm really excited to share it with you. Let's check out today this brand new X5 E50. So guys, today's episode of RBR is once again sponsored by 70mi and their brand new A810 4K dashcam. 70mi has sold over 1.5 million dashcams in 1 year to over 100 countries, spanning Europe, North America, Southeast Asia, and for good reason. I mean, just look at our A810 dashcam. Think of it less as a dashcam and more as your road companion that captures everything in 4K, whether you're there or not. Innovative safety and next-gen driving assistant. It's the first Sony Starvis 2 4K and 4G dashcam, and it also captures every detail in 4K HDR with the front camera or in 1080p HDR using the rear camera. And that's day or night, because this thing also has something called owl vision, which is night vision ensuring detail even in low light. But what truly sets this one apart are the smart features. Thanks to 4G connectivity in this, you can use the app to check live on your car. You can use things like Find My Car, get alerts if it detects something suspicious or a collision. We all worry when we park our cars in fishy areas, but with the Guardian mode on in the A810, it's got you covered. The best bit being it will automatically record if it detects anything fishy. With the A810, you're not just getting a dash cam. I think what you're really getting is peace of mind, wrapped in basically the latest technology in terms of cameras, automatic recording, etc. that allows us to do what we do best, which is just drive and live with our cars. And of course, as an RBR viewer, you get a great deal. Head to the link below for that deal, and a huge thanks for supporting our regular sponsors who keep our gears oiled. Now, back to the episode. So guys, I think the X5 is a hugely important car in the car market, not just for BMW, but for the car market in general. If anything, I kind of see it as an icon of the market, like a cornerstone of that sporty SUV segment that is growing massively now. Now, it wasn't the first to do the whole German SUV thing back in the day, but it was the first to really give it that sporty flavor when it was introduced 25 years ago. Winding back time to 1999, the world was basically about to end thanks to the millennium bug or doomsday potentially. And at this point, BMW said, F it, we're gonna make an SUV and go out with a bang. Okay, that's not actually what happened. What actually happened was back in '94, BMW had acquired Rover Group along with Land Rover, and shortly after that began development of their first off-road vehicle while strip mining said company of its assets. But the first spy shots of this car really gave the game away. This is the first time we saw an SUV hitting the Nürburgring trying to set a time. And they actually set a time. They set a time of 9 minutes and 30 seconds. Under 10 minutes for an SUV back then was crazy. BMW UK back then said it was only 30 seconds behind the E36 M3 of the time, which is absolutely insane. But that kind of gave away what they were going to do with that car, and it achieved it. It was the first SUV to be truly sporty like a saloon. Nowadays, that's kind of the norm and kind of the basis that everybody tries to do. Not everybody achieves it. But for a company known as the ultimate driving machine, this is something that they pride themselves on. And so the bar was set, and to be fair, it's been maintained ever since. Generation 2 saw our first ever X6, the original svelte coupe lined SUV or SAV. We had the first ever M cars with xDrive in the X5 and the X6M, and the X5 also added an option for a rear bench at this time as well. Generation 3 saw the first ever hybrid with the 40e come in, and then we come to our G series, where this is built on the CLAR platform still used by the 5 Series and the 7 Series, and a much bigger focus now on luxury with like thicker windows, pneumatic suspension, and it's a really handsome car, even in pre-facelift. I think it's one of the most handsome, you know, it's one of those cars that's just not Marmite. Everyone can look at it and say it's a really good looking SUV. But then you come to our LCI, and I think they've just made it even better. That's including the grille, which everybody thinks is big. I think this car looks absolutely fantastic from the front end. I mentioned when we had a first look at the X5 and the X6M, which is coming shortly or next on RBR, that the standard X5 and X6 just looks so bloody good now, just in their base form, so much closer in muscularity to the M versions, and I truly do believe that. And what's even more important than that is now in the LCI, all the X5s and the X6s are hybrid in some form, whether it's the mild hybrid system that you found even in the M cars, all the way to the full-on plug-in that we have in this car today, which is so much better than pre-facelift. More on this in a second. But the thing I love about the LCI is the lineup on offer. You have such a great choice of engines, all which have been massively improved. Everything from pure diesel and petrol engines. For example, we've got the 30D, we've got the xDrive50e available. You can get the 40i as well, and these are mild hybrids but basically pure combustion cars. On top of that, you also have the new M60i, which takes for the first time in a standard BMW the M engine, so the V8 in there, producing 523 brake horsepower and looking absolutely stunning. And then of course you have the full-on V8 powered 625 brake horsepower X5M and X6M. And then we have what I think is the best of the lot, particularly in terms of daily driving, and that is this car, the xDrive50e. Now you may have thought that I would have said that the diesel is the best, and certainly in the pre-facelift and in the past I would have said, yep, the diesel is the one to go for. In fact, I would have said that the xDrive45e, which is the pre-facelift version of this car, was the worst choice of the bunch. That was 389 odd brake horsepower, 600 Newton meters, 0 to 60 of 5.6. None of that mattered. It was close enough to the diesels in power. It was the 21 kilowatt usable battery with ridiculously low range of 20 to 30 if you were lucky. That just added a whole load of weight onto an otherwise brilliant car and was simply a company car tax write-off. That was the only reason you would buy that car. But now the changes in the facelift, because battery technology and EV technology has come along so massively, we've even changed the name of this model because the changes are so extensive. Now our engine is still the inline-6 unit, but it's been heavily updated now, and it produces more power than before thanks to those updates, up to 313 brake horsepower, and still so emotional. You'll see later just how emotional it is. Then we have the electric motor and the battery, 5th generation versions. Our motor is a synchronous motor that sits within our 8-speed gearbox, and that by itself now almost doubled in power versus pre-facelift, up to 197 brake horsepower by itself. And it's a really clever unit because it has this pre-gearing stage that can bring up to 450 Newton meters of torque available to use, which mimics basically a larger and a heavier unit. So a very clever hybrid system in this car. Then we have a larger battery, up to 26 kilowatt usable, and a much bigger range, showing between 50 to 60 miles, which from what I can see on screen, absolutely achievable given that we are in the dead of winter at the moment. So altogether that gives us almost 500 brake horsepower, 700 Newton meters, and a 0 to 60 of 4.8 seconds, alongside that huge range figure that will genuinely complement your life, and we'll talk about that while we're driving. And at a starting price of 80k, that's not far off the 69k that you'll pay for the diesels, and it's so much cheaper than the XM50e that's using the exact same technology, and it's, you know, ridiculous price and a ridiculous looking thing. Then we come to the design, and like I said, it's just so much better looking than the X5 ever has been. It all starts with the larger grille. Of course, the grille has increased in size. In our M Sport version here with the Shadowline pack, it's all finished in a nice matte black surround, and you can get the lighted grille, the iconic glow, should you want it. Then the lights, just like the new 5 Series, that same brand new design that they're going across all their cars. More interesting than that, I think, is the lower bumper, which is a lot more M. Quite aggressive, new air intakes, new air curtains on the side as well, all looking really nice, particularly in this individual color of Brooklyn Grey. The only thing that gives away that it's a hybrid are still the blue circles around the badges. I don't think we need this anymore, BMW. I think you can get rid of that blue. It's just so unnecessary. The side of the car is still the most classically SUV I think on the market. They've kind of maintained that, and I like that. I like the fact that it just looks like an X5 on the side and it hasn't evolved into something else. The rear is really cool because the lights have been redone into this X shape, which is, you know, like the X5, and they're nice in 3D, they protrude, really nice looking, and a real punch into the gut of the Mercedes GLE is the fact that we've got proper exhausts coming out from the Shadowline trim at the bottom as well. So overall, design-wise, I think absolutely beautiful. Now, we've got a big change on the outside, but the next big change that comes is from the inside of the LCI, because it's been brought right up to date with current 5 Series, current 7 Series, all the new BMWs, even though this was kind of last generation in terms of the G Series car. Now it looks exactly like those cars, and you can see it's quite a big difference versus those cars. We've got a lot less buttons. Of course, you've got the curved screen that we find in all of the BMWs, which, having lived with it myself in 2 separate cars now, the M3 and the M2, I really do like. It is a nice reduced way of having a larger screen versus, say, the way that Mercedes do it. But I wanted to give you that first initial impression from that view particularly as to how different this looks in terms of particularly your front dashboard. So guys, here is your first person view of the interior. Very much updated BMW design language on the inside. So that means less buttons, more screens, which I know not all of us are crazy about, but I found living with this screen to be a really nice kind of reduced way of having a larger screen in a car, rather than some of the ways that Mercedes, Tesla, etc., have done it. This is quite sedate. It's okay. You know, you've got your driver zone, which is fine, and it's got all its different themes that I'll show you in a minute, and you've got a long but reduced center screen as well. No silly passenger screen on that side, which no one ever uses. And still, what I think is much more important is a load of buttons for your driving element. And I'll speak more about that while we're driving, but the ability to change your modes quickly and your suspension height, and to have a proper gear lever. Okay, that's not a proper gear lever, but to have a gear selector here as well, that's all good. And of course, you still have use of the iDrive bit here, which is nice if you don't want to use the touch. Now, of course, we have the updated BMW operating system 8 in here. One annoying thing that I couldn't find how to undo was to bring this to the widget view that I have in my M2 and I had in my M3. Instead, I'm stuck with this, and I've got the personal assistant consistently here with this message of please talk to me all the time. Talk to me, speak to me. I can do this, I can do that. I don't actually give a shit, and I wish you would go away and bring back the lovely widget view. I might be an idiot and I have no idea how to do that in this, but this is the 0 screen, or the 0 layer if you like, where you have your home button. You can go towards your apps, where you can sort them between just vehicle apps, entertainment apps, where you have things like the Air Console games, which means playing video games while your phone with the game being on the screen here. You've got YouTube, etc. If we pop the car on, you can go straight into your climate menu by tapping on here, and you'll get the shortcut options for your steering wheel heating, your seat heating, and your seat cooling, all available at a tap of the finger. Or you can go to the full climate menu via this button here. So I'm not saying it's not accessible, but what I am saying is it was much more accessible with the large widgets. Maybe I just don't know how to do that, but then it's just too complicated to use because I'm quite experienced in these things, aren't I? Driver zone is great, okay? You have lots of different views, as you do in all of the modern BMWs now, for whatever type of content you want to display, including having a front camera view, which is the AR view. And one cool thing is, watch what happens to all these screens and lights, etc. when I press the sport mode button. Our 6-cylinder comes to life and everything changes, and you'll see more of what that looks like when you're driving. It's actually quite cool. Then you get a much cooler, much more BMW M look not only in your driver zone and your main screen here with the red and the blue theme, you also get it within your ambient lighting and your door cards. It's not just one color. And similarly in this X5 logo on the side. It's really nicely done. But then one thing I don't know if you noticed, head back to electric, turn the car off. You have the electric off sound and the electric on sound. So this has got BMW iconic sounds, the Hanz Zimmer created sounds for BMW, and they've left it in for the electric modes. This is brilliant. This is why I was complaining with Mercedes that they did not do. They did not give the car the EV sounds. BMW have done it. So you've got your EV sounds when you're driving in hybrid and electric mode, and you still have, of course, have a wonderful 6-cylinder, the best of both worlds, and I'm so glad that they did that. What I do really like are these vents. I love these new vent controllers that are quite clever. They can either move the vent up or down, left or right, or open and close, and it's a very satisfying, well-engineered little vent there. And they continue on this side as well. I do miss the BMW numbered shortcut buttons, I must say. You can still do shortcuts from up here, but it's just not as nice in a touchscreen. But hey, at least you got some buttons down here. Rear space is as nicely trimmed. Even with a large car seat in there, you've got loads of legroom as you would expect in a large car like this. Plenty of storage space as you would expect. Get my RBR press bag out of there. USB-C cables. One nice thing is you have got heated and cooled cup holders in here, which is nice. And then charging mat in the back, which actually has a little lip here to stop the phone from slipping, which I like. And if you want it, there's a USB-A cable as well for you dinosaurs out there. The merino leather seats are absolutely beautiful. These have a massage function, which I will show you while I'm driving, but just the stitching, the piping, the comfort of them, mind-blowing. And I love the fact that your armrest is heated as well. Now, the other side of this whole hybrid element is, of course, the practicality side. And in terms of boot space, you do lose a little versus your standard combustion cars. Those have 650 litres in the rear, and this still has a respectable 500 litres with a completely flat loading area. What's cool is that the X5 still maintains its two separate boot elements that I think BMW really took from their acquisition of Land Rover all those years ago. But it's useful because that lower half can be like a little tray, and now that lower half is also automated, so it does run by itself. But yeah, still very, very practical given the fact that this is a hybrid with so much range in it as well. Now, one thing I really liked about charging this car is the position of the charge flap, which for me is very convenient because it's right at the front of the car. My charging port is back here. Hello, boys. You can see there's my charger. And it's easy for me just to drive in, for me, in my circumstance, park that way and just plug the car straight in. Whereas when I had cars where the charging flaps were on the rear, I'd have to reverse them in. So I like that element. Might be subjective, might be only for me, but that I found really easy. Now guys, we are going to head off and see what this car drives like. I need to tell you why I think these cars are going to kill the EV and indeed the pure combustion car, because they're that good. Let's pop the car on. That was your electric sound. That's how we start. And let's talk a little bit about range and how useful this car has been to live with. So guys, the more and more that I drive these new hybrids, the more and more it feels to me like these are slowly becoming the last nail in the coffin for the EV. Battery tech has come along so far that we've doubled the range just from adding a few kilowatts more into our hybrid batteries just in these last 2 to 3 years. And that's making cars like this X5 seem so much more attractive to me. And I want to explain what that has meant in actual real world driving. I love the range of this car. It's the dead of winter at the moment, okay? And when I got it, I was being quoted 450 miles on the combustion side with the i6 and over 50 miles, 54 miles on the pure electric side. Now you'll be able to hear the iconic sounds from Hanz Zimmer, which is in our electric mode, which is great. Now let me run you through, for example, what my day-to-day has been like, all right? We started with that 54-mile range. I've done 2 school runs, I've done the groceries, I've been to the post office, I've still got 30 miles left. And that's ever since I've started filming with you guys as well, solely in electric mode as well. So this has been what my last week has been like. I've been relying on electric mode for all of those local jobs. And those local jobs is where in a combustion car, we would waste the most fuel. You guys know this already. It's those trips when you're in cities, urban areas, or local drives just darting out of places locally to you is when you get the worst miles per gallon, you get the worst economy out of your combustion cars. And that is when having decent usable range helps massively. I think you will save hundreds of pounds a month if you have a routine like most of us do by using just the electric mode in those local areas. I really, really do. And then when you need the longer trips, you can just flick the pedal down in this. It'll go into hybrid S, and you've got a beautiful, beautiful inline six engine at your fingertips. Then you get this really cool adaptive content when you go into sport mode as well on your main screen. And it's a nice little kind of BMW M hint there, giving you more info that you want as a driver. The other great thing about this updated 50e is that we've got loads more power if you're only using electric mode. Let's go back into electric mode again. Now, like I said, you've got 197 brake horsepower, which is almost double what you had before. So the car just doesn't feel underpowered when you're driving it in sole electric mode. I mean, don't get me wrong, it doesn't feel as powerful as, say, popping on sport mode and using the full inline six. But say you're joining a motorway, you want to do an overtake, and you're in electric mode, which is an instant change as well, by the way. It has enough power, it really, really does, so don't worry about that. And that's a great part of this. So again, I think if you're really into the whole EV thing for A, the environment, etc., but then B, saving costs like most of us are, these hybrids are better. They're going to be more practical for you. They're going to save the fuel that you need to save in the worst of circumstances, which is those local trips where you get the worst economy. And then when you need an engine, you have an engine. So in my opinion, why do you need an EV? You really don't. So in my opinion, where I saw one of my colleagues was saying that the 30D is the best X5 out at the moment, I respectfully disagree, because for most of us, cost of living is a real thing. Like I said, I think you'll save hundreds of pounds in the month, thousands of pounds in the year, because you will use the battery so much. And it's easy to charge up. You just plug it in, 7 kilowatt charger, it'll be full again in those periods where you're not using it as well. So you could pretty much go through the whole day just using the battery locally. And because of that, I respectfully disagree. I think instead of the diesels or the pure petrols, this plug-in hybrid, it's really, if you want the best daily X5, it's the one to go for. The other cool thing about electric mode is if you go in here and you tap electric, you've actually got an individual electric mode as well, and you can configure it. For example, you can have your damping in sport and your steering in sport like I've done here, and then you can have the eco climate control. You can set that up the way you want it to be, and I like that. There's not just like a singular electric mode. They haven't kind of sidelined it just because it's a plug-in. Similarly, if we shift into hybrid, there is something called Hybrid Eco Pro mode, which again, it uses navigation to look at the route and plan when it's going to use the engine or the battery a bit more cleverly, etc. So again, useful. One thing I don't like about this versus its rivals is that you cannot easily, or at least I can't find a way to manage the recuperation easily. In the Mercedes EQ cars, or in the hybrids indeed, like the E-Class hybrid, when you're in electric mode, you just tap the pedals and you can change the recuperation level, which I think is so intuitive. In this car, I simply can't find that option. Hybrid mode is really nice. You get all of that power from both units, and it's smart. It'll use the battery in the urban areas and it'll bring in the engine when you need it. And I found it a lot smarter than Mercedes' hybrid system, which just seemed to have complete battery bias and ignore the combustion engine. So hybrid mode has actually been pretty much the best one to use actually for those, medium to longer trips. Okay, now it's time to use inline six. Watch this, because we're going to go into sport mode. Watch the ambience. How cool is that? I really like it. It's even more exaggerated at night, which is really nice. And now we have a really characterful inline six. This is a nice engine. You pop it down into S mode. Listen to that. I think it sounds, in its revs and its build up in power, quite M-like actually, which is par for the course with the BMW inline six engine, but it's a really nice engine, and when supported by the hybrid system, like I said, you're getting up to 500 brake, which is great. Truly, there's no lag. It's a really nice engine. The gearbox is a pretty decent partner as well in terms of shifting. I was surprised by that. I thought it'd be very laggy. Now again, if we're talking comparisons to rivals, The GLE 400 hybrid has got a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine. Us poor Mercedes fans, man, we're crying about 4 cylinders these days. But that is the reality, and instead in this X5 you got a wonderful inline 6 like this that at times had me thinking, am I sure this is an inline 6? It sounds quite V8 like, you know, it's a nice, powerful, rumbly sounding 6-cylinder. So you've got the emotional side on this as well, and then you come to the dynamics, and it's a BMW. It handles decently well for a heavy hybrid SUV. You know, the steering's nice, the body roll, considering the fact, let's get onto suspension, it doesn't have, or it cannot get, the adaptive suspension that the other X5 models can as the plug-in. Despite that, we've got pneumatic air suspension as standard on both our front and rear axles, which makes this a really comfortable car. And even though we haven't got the anti-roll stabilization systems or the adaptive dampers, it does a perfectly decent job as a daily SUV of handling really quite well. You know, what's nice is you don't see a corner and suddenly panic that there's a corner in front of you. Instead, you know, get me a nice B-road in this car and I would be absolutely confident in driving fast down some nice country lanes. That's the type of car it is, and that's what I expect of a BMW car. Now in terms of comfort and luxury, I've shown you, you've got your heated cup holders, etc. You've got your heated seats, steering wheel, armrest. The other side of it is the seats. I can pop on massaging seats here just by tapping on the door card here, and now this car is giving me a butt massage, and I have mixed feelings about this. Most of them are quite positive. Apart from that, you've got like the self-driving mode where the car will steer itself. Obviously it tells you to grab the wheel when it needs you to as per regulation, but for longer trips, again, a nice little feature to have in this car. The heads-up display has been great. In sport mode you get this like flying arrow that shows you how much power you're using as well as the direction you're going. You get your speed limit in there as well. And your driver displays in the front, again, adaptive per mode as you're driving, with so many things in there, like your AR displays showing what's in front of you. You've got your assistance display showing your car and the cars around you, the fact that you've got a roundabout coming up, etc. Also useful, and again, it all changes depending what mode you're in as well. So we've got a really comfortable car here with air suspension. We've got massive combustion range, which is nice, and really decent electric range, which I think is the key here. It's the key for a daily car. It's the key versus even buying a diesel, I think, because if you're charging at home or you're charging at the cheaper points, which a smaller battery will afford you, then, like I said, those urban areas where we all waste so much money, we're just going to save so much. We'll save enough to hopefully make these new cars that are so much more expensive a bit more affordable in terms of monthly payments. So in my opinion, I think better than your standard diesel or combustion X5s for a daily, the plug-in is now the way to go. It's the way to go versus combustion. It's the way to go versus EV, and I'm seeing this more and more across manufacturers. I found the same thing with the Porsche Cayenne. I found the same thing with the Mercedes E-Class. If you're looking for a daily car that's part luxury, even part fun, the hybrid is potentially the way to go. So guys, I really hope that you've enjoyed this full drive of the X5 xDrive50e. If you have, as always, please like and subscribe to RBR, and I'll see you guys next time.